Oh, yay, we're live.
Relax.
Okay, cool. Hey, everybody. My name is Michelle Wong. I'm the founder of the Nonlinear Path. And I got really inspired one day during my meditation to talk to more women and hear our stories. And I think what really inspired it was I was thinking a lot about just me and my personal habits and patterns. And I have this tendency to compare myself to other women. And just, it's not a good feeling. And so during that meditation, it just hit me like we all have stories, we all have something to share. And the way that we change things is really by lifting each other up and celebrating each other. And the common ground to that is really to connect with more women and to connect with each other at a deeper level so that we take off the mask. So with that, I reached out to a lot of women in my life and really just keeping it casual as we talk about what's going on in our lives and stories of change, transformation, and knowing that every woman has a story to share. And so I'm really excited today to introduce to you my good friend, Maria. Maria, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Kurylo?
Yes, that's it. Kurylo.
Maria Kurylo. And she and I met at in I guess a women's online group, for lack of a better word, Earth Keepers Council. And I really admire Maria for her strength, for her ability just to speak her truth. Even when there's strong personalities, and she just keeps it real. And that's something that I really admire in her. So I think Maria is a perfect person to start off with our stories. And a little bit about Maria is professionally, she's a high priestess. She's an energy healer. And at the same time, she's a mom, and she lives in Canada. She lives in a house. She has 2 kids. She's married. And so I would love you, Maria, to just, share what wants to come through, and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. I just before we go on to that sort of tangent, I want to say you said something about what you admire was me speaking my truth. And so part of my process is to sink in almost every day. It's not always easy to find that. It's easy to find the space, but it's making the choice to cultivate the space, to drop in. And I like to work with oracle cards. I want to share with you right before I started our talk today. This was the card I pulled, Voice of Truth.
Amazing.
Joan of Arc. And this has been a huge part of my journey, is being able to speak my truth, because you can imagine when somebody asks me what I do, it's like, okay, what's going to run through my head? Okay, what do I tell them? What are they going to resonate with? Where is their framework for sort of esoteric work? Like, what the hell does priestess mean, right? And so for me, being able to fully own that word and the work that I do and how I'm here to serve in the world has been such a process of reclaiming my truth and finding the confidence and the strong foundation to speak my truth. So just thank you for saying that, because that actually reinforces the path that I'm on. And I just love how it always works, the sort of the divine guidance or higher intuition awareness that happens, that I pulled that card today. And that's sort of where we're starting off.
Yeah, and it's funny because before, we sat down and connected online, I was thinking, like, it would be so cool if, like, Maria pulled a card. I'm like, maybe she will pull one. And I'm so glad you did, because it was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is something, I mean, my work, the sort of the phrase that I use is liberate your inner wisdom keeper. And it's finding, like, reclaiming our, whatever you want to call it, like from inner voice, inner knowing, intuition, higher self, divinity, it doesn't really matter, but it's being able to do the work to be able to listen, right? Because, like, we all know what it feels like when we don't listen to our heart or to our intuition, and then how expansive it is when we actually do. And that's such an important part of the process. And so I say this because I think it's, as women in the 21st century, going through our lives with so many demands and expectations, and not just that, but also we're in like a counter-cultural revolution right now of systematically dismantling the patriarchy that lives not just external to us, but also within us, and letting go of the shame around our bodies, our sexuality, our intuitive gifts, our feelings, and being able to communicate our feelings. This is such big work that we're doing that it's so easy to just check out, because it's so much, it's so overwhelming. And so being able to come back into yourself and into your center, even if it's just breathing, it's imperative right now. And I feel it, like just even preparing for our talk, I felt all this anxiety in my body. And I know it's not just from our talk, preparing for the talk, it was other things going on. And I woke up this morning, the first thing I was doing in bed was playing with my hair like furiously. I'm like, okay, just stop moving, take a breath. And it's like we live with this undercurrent of maybe it's not anxiety, but just like stress or on edge because there's so much.
Yeah, it's almost like pressure to perform in a way,
Yeah.
and to like, be perfect, and everything's all dotted and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, actually, like when you're talking about sharing your truth, there's this one thing I remember during our group call in EKC, that I was like, wow, like I so appreciate Maria just for like being you. Cause like for me, I find that when I'm in a social circle or any type of circle, when there's like, everyone's agreeing on something, and like, like for me, like when I don't necessarily agree, or I'm just like, whoa, everyone thinks like that, and I don't. Like, I won't say anything, or I'll be curious to learn more. But I just remember, like, we were talking about, Peru, and you were just saying, like, I think you guys are all crazy for wanting to do ayahuasca. And like, I was like, whoa, because I kind of felt that way, but I didn't want to say it because everyone was so like talking about it. But you were just like, you guys are all crazy. And I was like, thank you. Because like, yeah, you were so real. And it was not everyone's opinion. So I just really admired that.
I find that, what do I want to say about that? Like, I know for me, I've always kind of been on the fringe, and ayahuasca's on the fringe too, right? And there's a place in me that it's like, what feels true to me while still making space for other people's opinions, right? How do I not impose my opinions but still have the courage to speak up? And it takes me to this memory of when I was in grade 8, and I was so passionate about the environment and not littering. And like in grade 8, people, they don't care. They don't give a shit about that.
They still don't care.
They still don't care. And it infuriates me. And my friends knew this about me. And so they would throw their garbage on the ground to watch me get pissed off and pick it all up.
Oh.
And it's like inside of me is this feeling of like there's anger, right? There's anger, but there's also, I'm not going to play your stupid game. Like, this is important to me, and I'm going to do it anyway. And it doesn't mean it's comfortable, and I don't do it all the time, but it's like, no, I have to keep doing this. And that's part of the card that I pulled today. Like Joan of Arc as, she's an actual historical figure, but when you think of her as an archetype, like she's someone who believed in her cause so strongly that she was willing to die for it. And she did. They burned her at the stake. And so she's here as an archetype to be like, you have to stand in your truth and not be willing to compromise the mission that you're here for. And I think we all have a mission, and we may not know what it is, and whether it feels like it's really big, like creating a movement or like getting involved in social justice or politics, or whether it's simply being good or at what you do or presence every day. We all do have a mission, and the more we can get in tune with what that mission is, the easier it is for us to speak up. And I know in the case of the ayahuasca, for me, a huge piece, and it's not just my mission, but it's also like comes from my own childhood wounding around numbing substances and alcoholism and stuff that was in my family. It's like, how do we create awakened consciousness just by being present, rather than using other substances to do that for us? And I'm very open now to having the discussion around the ayahuasca and other hallucinogenic plant medicines when they're used in the right context. And for me, it's the having right relationship with it and the abuse of it. I feel the same way about cannabis and marijuana. I'm very disheartened by the way it's unraveling here in Canada. I'm all for the legalization of it, but it has to be used in right relationship with the plant. So kind of a digression on the bigger picture is like, I find it's easier for me to stand in my truth and to speak up, even if it's counter culture, because I'm so connected to what that truth is, while still being willing to listen to other people's thoughts around it.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Now what do we say?
Now what?
There's so many things to say. So many ways to go.
Oh, well, we were talking even on Facebook, and like how did you get to where you are? Because I know you mentioned you used to work, well, you used to have like you used to not have your own business. You used to work in government. That's such a like 180. So I would love to hear more.
Well, and it ties in so great with what we were just saying about having this sense of mission or purpose, because I always had it, but I didn't know what it was. Like, I grew up in an atheist family for the most part, never went to church, had this like really strong disdain for organized religion and Jesus in particular. And my work is spiritual. I'm a spiritual teacher. So it's like I had no frame of reference, but there was something inside of me that was very much connected to a path of self-discovery to understand what it was. And so I went through university, and this is the thing I want to go back a second. This is the thing, is that listening to ourselves and our intuition is a language. It's something that we are innately born with. Infants have the capacity to learn any language, make any sound of all the languages in the world, but they only speak the language that's reinforced as a child, and they let the rest go. And until we decide to pick up those tools again and learn, and it can be bumpy, it can be tricky, it can be really hard. And so intuition is the same thing. We are all come into this world with the innate capacity to feel and see and know and be connected with ourselves and the divine. But if it's not reinforced, or even worse, if it's like frowned down upon, then we repress it and we shut it down. And so for me, I did have this like guiding sense, but I didn't know what the hell it was. I just kept going. And so I went to university and I studied political science and did my master's in it. And I was thinking about this getting ready for the call, how with my master's, I wasn't even really given a choice on the topic I was going to research and write about. My crotchety old professor in his 70s was like, these are like the 5 subjects that I want to put my name on. And so pick one.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was like the ultimate expression of not listening to myself. It's like, okay, I'm going to talk about official languages in Canada. Wow.
What does that mean?
I know. Why do we have 2 official languages? That was my thesis, right?
Oh my goodness.
Essentially. And I enjoyed the process. I did. But the other thing that was really, that's always stood out for me was in his classes, when I would write, he would say, I would write, I feel. He's like, no, we don't feel, we think. I think, only reinforcing, like, further getting, like that paradigm of not listening, not being in touch with intuition or my truth. And so it's almost like we get to a place where we're so far from our path, and that becomes so painful that that's like the catalyst to wake up and to look at what it is, right? And for me, that initial process wasn't, well, it wasn't a huge crisis. Like sometimes that's what it takes. But there was a place in me, like after I graduated from university, my thought was, I was studying public admin. I'm like, God, I don't want to work for the bureaucracy. It sounds horrible. Mm-hmm. And disclaimer, a lot of people thrive in that. But that was for me, right? And I'm so grateful for people that thrive in that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be chaos. So, yay to the policymakers, but and the politicians, because I wouldn't want that job either. So, yeah, there is a place where I just knew, like, oh God, what have I done? I've invested all this time and energy into this master's in political science, and it's the last thing. I don't want to write another academic paper again in my life, but that's what I've trained for. And so I didn't know what to do, but I very consciously, I only ever applied for one job with the government, and that was Environment Canada, because I could get my head around that, because it was a cause, right? And working for the environment, I can make that sacrifice of my soul to go into politics or government for that. But I always knew it wasn't where I was supposed to be. And so I had a really, I did a lot of personal growth classes that in retrospect were very much based on spiritual principles, but they didn't package it that way. It was a leadership course, and I had a teacher, and he was like, he really ingrained it inside of me of like, make the most of where you're at, because you're learning it for a reason. And so I really trusted that. I knew this wasn't the place I was to be, but it was taking me where I needed to go, which ended up being right out of politics, right out of the government. And so being able to trust that, it's like, and it's sitting in the I don't know, which is really uncomfortable. Because when we're uncomfortable, we want to fix it, right? We're going to fidget. We're going to, anxiety, we're going to eat, we're going to move, we're going to distract. It's really hard to sit in that place. But I think that's what the key was for me, was knowing that it was taking me where I needed to go. Yeah, I don't know if you have anything you want to jump in and say, because I can keep going, but.
No, I'm just, so what, because that takes guts, right? Like it takes guts to like, well, I'm going to start taking personal development leadership classes, and knowing that this is not where you want to be, but it feels safe, right? Because it's, you've got the health insurance. Well, in Canada, everyone has health insurance, but like you have like a stable income coming in.
Yeah.
And so, and you want to do something else. And I feel like a lot of women are in that boat. But they can cling on to jobs that don't really serve them, but it pays them. And it's intimidating to make that leap and start something on your own. So did you make a leap, or was it like gradual until your income matched, your business income matched your job income?
Much to my husband's dismay, no. I just made the leap, and I think it put him into quite the tailspin. And here's the thing that is tricky, is that I have always felt financially supported and often have been. And I was even talking to my husband about that this morning. It's like, how do I share a story for someone who doesn't feel that? Right? I don't know. I don't know. Right. And there's a place within me that decided I'm going to be okay. And then circumstances lined up to prove that belief over and over again. And there's no quick fix. There's no Band-Aid. There's no pill for this, right? This is a place that takes deep inner work because when we hold a belief, our ego works as such to protect that belief, right? And we want to prove ourselves right over and over again. The issue is that most of our beliefs don't serve us. And I've got a lot of beliefs that don't serve me, believe me. But the one belief I held on to was, I'm going to be okay. And what happened, to speed up the story, was I had my first child, and then I had my second child. And when I had my second child, I was very deeply injured from that birth, and physically injured. And I couldn't walk for a long time.
Mm.
And that in itself didn't feel like this big, like revelatory process healing with him. But I think it did flip a switch in a sense of, I'm not going to settle anymore.
Mm.
Right? I'm not going to settle. And beyond, it wasn't just the injury, but going into a job that this is my personality. I can't waste my time. I've got work to do in this world. And going into my job every day was a waste of my time, even though I was busy. I'm like, I've got other things to do. Like I can't. Like, it was just like, I'm going to vomit. I can't. And so then it was almost perhaps that injury or his birth that was like, okay, this is it, right? And I've got 2 kids now. How do I want to raise them? And I never thought I would be a stay-at-home mom. It terrified me to have 2 kids at home. Like, how do you do this? Like, I don't know. But I did it. And we ended up moving out to British Columbia, to a tiny hippie community, Nelson, BC. And we went on a 3-week holiday and ended up staying for 3 years.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I don't know, we just did it. It just happened. And when Nelson is a place I'd visited often, and my parents lived there, and I just felt like I was home. Right. And so again, it's like listening without understanding, but listening to this like physical or energetic pull that I'm home. And I had a moment when I went outside, and I think the kids were sleeping, and I raised my hands up to the sky, very melodramatic, like in the movies. And I looked at the mountains and the lake and the sky, and I'm like, I am not going to let time, money, or energy stop me anymore from creating what I create in my life. I'm like, I'm done with that storyline. And I don't know if that was it or if it's circumstance. I don't know, but that moment sticks in my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, this would be a great movie. So it's going to happen. And so I knew I was not going back to my job. I could not go back there. And we had a prime minister who was very conservative. Not like in the States. It's very different. Our politics, you're conservative versus ours. Ours is quite liberal compared to yours. And, but he was just cutting everything. Like, he was just so misaligned with my values, and he was cutting all the programs. So I started calling my boss. I'm like, I want to be laid off. And I would bug them like every month. I want to be one of the ones cut off. And they're like, Maria, we know, like, stop telling us. Like, we will put your name forward. And I just kept asking. And then the irony is that it turned out that my job was the only one that didn't get cut, but I'd have to reapply for it. So I'm like, I'm out. I'm not running for my job. So lay me off. And I mean, I don't know. Like, this is where the faith came in. I got a huge severance. I got an education allowance. I got a retirement fund. That's not going to last me long. I don't get it till I'm 60 anyway, right. But it'll last me a couple of years. And that was the grace that came in. And then I knew that I wanted to learn. I was already a yoga teacher, Kundalini yoga teacher, and I knew that I wanted to learn more about that stuff, that world. I had been teaching yoga on the side for a really long time, and I thought that's what I wanted to do as a career. And then I found a book one day on energy medicine by Donna Eden. And I took it home, flipped through it. I'm like, I want to learn this thing and this thing. Do they do training? And one was starting in 3 weeks just in Vancouver, so a drive away from me. And it just so happened that program was accredited by the University of Southern Oregon. So the federal government would actually fund that with my education allotment from my layoff. So it was just like, how can I not trust? How can I not trust? And it's not always that seamless, right? But it was enough for me to keep going. And it's enough for me even to say this story to remind me to keep going, because, oh my God, I have doubt all the time. It's like, how is this going to work? Can I really do this? Should I get another job? Like, it's like, calm down. It's always worked out up until now. So why wouldn't I keep trusting it?
Wow, I just got chills. Like, like that, like telling your boss, like, I want to be laid off. I want to be laid off. Like, that takes guts. Like, holy smokes, like that just takes guts. Cause then you're being seen and you're telling them like, I'm not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And they can like technically just, well, I don't know if they can, but they can maybe just fire you. Like,
They couldn't because I was in a with
government.
the union
Okay.
unionized, so they couldn't just fire
But,
me. But yeah,
but it's
it
like
wouldn't have
that.
stopped me.
Yeah. But like that, I mean, that takes, in my opinion, from my perspective, that takes a lot of courage just to state what you need in such a professional environment with the government and saying, hey, I want to be laid off. And then having just things line up. It was almost like you drew that line in the sand when
Yeah,
that dramatic moment. And just to have everything line up after that, so beautiful.
yeah, it's pretty powerful. But I also know like it's like how much discomfort are you willing to live with?
Mm,
And I couldn't live with it anymore. And I
mm.
think you had a similar story where I went in for like my performance review and they're like, okay, so where do you want to go from now? And I'm like, out of the government.
Like, meh.
And they're like, well, no, like you're being groomed to like move up to go into management. I'm like, why would I want to go into management? That's more
Mm,
hours less money. Like really, like
mhm.
for the responsibility, it's not worth it. And I was always very adamant with my boss. I'm like, I'm not taking my work home. And
Wow.
I don't know if that was immature or disrespectful or just really drawing a line in the sand again. But I was like, I will get my work done. But I'm not going to perpetuate a culture where we
Mhm.
are given 37.5 hours in the work week to work, but we're all actually working like 60 and pretending we're doing it in 37.5 hours.
Mhm.
Because that's unrealistic expectations and on everybody. Then we're just feeding into this cycle of unhappiness and overwhelmed. And I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the government, the people are going on stress leave all the time here.
Mm.
Like they burn out and then they have to leave for 6 weeks. My boss
Oh,
disappeared on us once for like 6 weeks. We had no idea where she went. Nobody would tell us. And then one day she's
wow.
back and there's no conversation. Right. And it's
Wow.
like, what are we doing to ourselves? And I couldn't do it anymore. It was so uncomfortable. Just like being in the schoolyard. I'm like, I have to pick up the garbage even though they're making fun of me. Like I can't,
Mhm.
my principles are just too strong. Like I can feel it in my body. It's too fierce.
Mhm.
I can't ignore it. Hmm.
Hmm. Oh, wow. I'm so inspired by your story and just like how you're just like you don't go for the bullshit, you know? Like you're you and you're expressing you authentically and what you need and you're clear about it.
Mm.
Yeah, and you're not afraid to speak up for yourself. Um,
Yeah. In some places I am, but I'm working on it. In other places, yeah,
yeah.
you're right. Like it's been, and again, it's such a strong pull. It's such a strong feeling. I don't really know how to describe it.
Mhm.
Um, and everybody's going to have a different access point for it. It might be an illness. It could be an injury. It could be losing something really big in your life, right? That
Mhm.
prompts it. And for me, I didn't have to go to that. Well, I don't know. My injury was pretty devastating,
Mhm.
so it changed a lot of things for me, but we all have our threshold and some of us can stay in that discomfort. I know people, and it's not a right or wrong, but some people can really just live out that discomfort and ignore it. In
Mhm.
fact, I think probably the majority of us do. Yeah.
Yeah. It was actually also good to hear that even now, like you still have doubts. Like it's
Oh
just
yeah.
like it's not a good feeling, but I don't know. There's like I don't know, like I think as women, when we see other women, be it in business or whatever, it's like we see such beautiful light of them, which is great. But it's like we forget that they're also human. And
Totally.
yeah, because like
Yeah.
anytime I see like a woman with or a guy, but like they have a beautiful website and it's their business. Like in my mind, it's like they're established, and they're just going pro and perfect.
Yeah.
And it's always really helpful to hear, oh yeah, like they go through the same emotions that I go through,
Mm-hmm.
doubt and all
Yeah.
that jazz, which is not a good feeling, but at least it like I'm not special in that area.
Yeah. No, you're not at all. I mean, I think that's part of the problem is that we walk around pretending, right? Like you said, like drop the masks, and we walk around pretending because there's a place where we don't want to, it's going to be used against us, our vulnerability, right? That's what we believe. And rightly so, a lot of times it is used against us. And it's really hard to show up authentic, because authentic isn't just the good stuff, it's the bad stuff too. And I kind of sit with that all the time, because part of my work, I don't call myself a coach, but there's a part where being a teacher and a spiritual guide, I am offering ways of viewing your life, right, with my clients. And it's like, do I share when I'm in crisis so they actually see the mess, or is that off-putting? Or do I share when I've already worked it all out so I can be wise, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's kind of a bit, I walk in between, because there's also a place where if we haven't fully processed our experience and we start sharing it, we almost miss the capacity to embody all of the, like integrate all of the learning from it. And so I really strive to be authentic and have boundaries for myself, right? It's like, let me actually do my own work too. So that's important. Like a lot of people, they do like their Facebook lives, and they're really polished. And I'm like, you know what? If I feel like talking and I'm in my pajamas without my makeup, I'm just going to do that, right? Because that's me too. And you can go to my website if you want to see me polished. I mean, and I don't really have much makeup on, like, no, I'm not going to get all done up. I'm going to still be real, but I had a really good photographer who got the light really beautifully. Totally. So, but it's like, that's me too, but that's not me every day. Like I don't know. It's really sad, the games that we play.
Yeah, I actually really liked what you said about like oversharing, or not oversharing, but just like when we're in that moment of crisis or whatever, if we speak it out loud too soon, then we miss the embodiment for what we need to process. And I think that's the most authentic thing, right? To tune in, and what is it that I really need? Because a lot of times we forget to tune in, and like, what is it that I really need versus like this external energy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm feeling that a lot right now these days, as I have a lot of stuff that I'm processing, and I notice my aversion to sitting down and doing my morning practice. It's like, oh, I'm just going to read. I'm just going to have this cup of tea. I feel like doing this. And it's like, yeah, that's nourishing too. But Maria, you're really avoiding the discomfort that's that anxiety you're waking up with in the morning. So it's learning to be able to go move through the discomfort. And I think for anyone who wants to make a big shift in their life, can you make like the shifts that you can make, the subtle shifts will actually have the bigger impact than like walking out of your job, right? To make that big, bold decision to leave, that's great. But until we start to really get the inner resources to find our inner strength and our whatever it is, our anchor point to what it is that we truly desire, I think that's way more potent, because then we have that solid foundation to make that big external change.
That is so true.
I think we're always looking for the Band-Aid. It's not our fault. That's how we've been raised, right? And you want the pill, you want it to be easy and quick. But healing isn't any of that, and healing isn't linear either. This path we're on isn't linear. It just has the appearance of being so. So I think if we can start going in and doing that work, that's going to really help us in making those aligned decisions. And maybe you might even find like, oh, I don't need to make that big, bold step that I thought I needed to make, right? Or it looks different than you thought it would look.
Yeah, I like that. Just tuning in and just trusting in the little things in our daily lives that make a big impact. Yeah. Oh, well, awesome. I feel like this is a good place to kind of close. Is there anything else you want to add or share before we end it?
I don't think so. It feels good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time and being
Hmm.
open to sharing your journey.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, you have a lot of amazing offerings and work. Share. Do you want to share how people can find you?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So my website's my name, Maria, Kurylo.com. I also have Facebook. It's Maria Serafina, Liberate Your Inner Wisdom Keeper, my Facebook page. And right now, the offering that I have that I'm focusing on the most is every new moon, gathering a group of women for 60 minutes to do energy work. And again, it's an interactive process. So doing energy work, offering that space for self-reflection and really starting to tune into your inner knowing and listening to what's actually inside. So that's the new moon energetic activation.
It's a good one.
And
It's a good one.
thank you. It's really fun to do. And I work with women one-on-one as well, 90-minute or 60-minute sessions online, doing the same sort of personalized process. And in the future, it's still a ways away, but I'll be offering a retreat in France
Yay.
to connect with the divine feminine and our sensuality, our intuition, and our knowing, and sitting with sacred sites. And I'll be doing that with another sister, Kit Maloney.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
with actually. So I don't know if you'll be interviewing her, but we'll be offering that retreat to France
Amazing.
together. Yeah,
Wow.
next fall. So lots of good
Okay.
things. Lots of good things.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm grateful for your time and for the work that you do and your energy,
Mm.
everything.
Thank you, Michelle. This is so great. This will be really powerful conversations for your community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
All right. Well, take care.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.